There is a quiet moment, one you almost missed, where something unsaid begins to echo louder than anything that was ever spoken. It doesn't arrive like a noise, it arrives like a feeling. Subtle. Persistent. Almost like a memory that doesn't belong to the past, but to something still trying to reach you now. And maybe you felt it. That strange pause in your day, that sudden stillness when everything around you continues, but inside, something slows down. As if time itself is waiting for you to notice something deeper. Not obvious. Not loud. But important. Don't skip, because this is where it begins to unfold. There was a moment, recently, or perhaps not so recently, when your person stood on the edge of saying something real. Not casual words. Not surface-level conversation. Something heavier. Something that carried meaning they didn't fully understand themselves. But they stopped. Not because it wasn't true, but because it felt too real to release. And now, that unspoken truth hasn't disappeared. It hasn't faded. It's still there, moving quietly beneath everything, shaping thoughts, shifting emotions, and finding its way back toward you in ways you might not expect. Pause for a second. Why does it feel like something is missing, even when nothing is technically wrong? Why do certain moments feel incomplete, like a sentence that never reached its final word? This is not random. There are connections that don't rely on constant communication. There are feelings that don't need daily reminders to exist. And there are messages that take time before they are finally understood. Stay till the end, because something important is waiting for you. Your person has been carrying something within them, not out of confusion, but out of hesitation. A quiet hesitation that builds when someone realizes that what they feel is deeper than they expected. And depth can be overwhelming when you're not ready to face it. So instead of speaking, they observed. Instead of expressing, they held back. But here's what most people don't realize. Silence is not emptiness. Sometimes, silence is where the most important truths are forming. And right now, something is forming. You might have noticed small shifts, changes that are hard to explain. Maybe they feel closer in certain moments, even without being physically near. Maybe their energy feels different, softer, more present, even if nothing has been said directly. That's because something inside them is moving. Not dramatically, not suddenly, but steadily. Like a realization that keeps returning, no matter how many times it's pushed aside. Let me ask you something. Have you ever tried to ignore a feeling, only to find it growing stronger the more you avoid it? That's exactly where they are. They tried to keep things simple, logical, manageable. But emotions don't follow rules. Especially when they are real. And what they feel is real. That's why it keeps coming back. That's why certain thoughts about you don't leave easily. That's why there's a sense that something important was left unfinished. Something important is waiting for you, but not in the way you expect. It's not about sudden confessions or dramatic moments. It's about understanding what has been quietly building, behind the scenes, without pressure, without force. Because what is real doesn't need to rush. There's something powerful about things that take time. Think about it. The strongest connections aren't always the loudest ones. They aren't the ones that demand attention or prove themselves constantly. They are the ones that stay, even in silence. Even in distance. Even in uncertainty. And this has stayed. Even when it wasn't acknowledged. Even when it wasn't expressed. Even when it felt easier to ignore. There's a reason for that. Because what your person felt in that moment, when they almost spoke, wasn't temporary. It wasn't something that would fade if left alone. It was something that needed time to be understood. And now, that time is slowly revealing its purpose. But here's where it becomes even more interesting. They're starting to realize something they didn't see before. Not suddenly, not all at once, but in small, undeniable ways. Moments where your presence crosses their mind without warning. Moments where they feel something, and don't know how to explain it. Moments where silence feels heavier, because something inside them wants to break it. This is not coincidence. This is awareness, slowly rising. Don't skip, because this part matters more than it seems. Awareness doesn't come with announcements. It comes quietly, almost like a whisper you can't ignore anymore. And once it arrives, things begin to shift. Not outwardly at first, but internally. And internal shifts are the ones that change everything. Right now, your person is standing in that space. Between what they used to believe, and what they're starting to feel. Between what felt safe, and what now feels real. Between silence, and something that wants to be spoken. But here's the truth that changes everything. Real feelings don't disappear just because they are unspoken. They grow. They evolve. They find their way back, until they are finally understood. And this is where something deeper begins. There's a reason this message found you now. Not earlier. Not later. Now. Because timing isn't random when it comes to things like this. There are moments when everything aligns just enough, for you to start seeing what was always there, but not fully clear. And this is one of those moments. Something important is waiting for you, but it requires patience to see it clearly. Because not everything meaningful reveals itself instantly. Some things unfold. Layer by layer. Feeling by feeling. Realization by realization. And right now, you're only seeing the beginning. But even the beginning carries weight. Even the beginning holds truth. Even the beginning tells you that something is moving, whether you see the full picture yet or not. Let this sink in. If something wasn't real, it wouldn't still be present. If something didn't matter, it wouldn't keep returning. If something wasn't meaningful, it wouldn't feel this way. So why does it? Why does it stay, even when it's quiet? Why does it return, even when it's ignored? Why does it feel unfinished, even when nothing is happening? Because it's not over. Not in the way you think. But not in the way you expect either. This is not about rushing toward an outcome. This is about recognizing a shift that is already happening. And sometimes, the most powerful changes are the ones you don't see immediately. They build. They deepen. They prepare something before it becomes visible. And your person. They are in that preparation. Slowly, quietly, but undeniably. There is something they haven't said yet. Not because it isn't important, but because they are just beginning to understand it themselves. And when someone begins to understand something real, they don't rush to explain it. They sit with it. They feel it. They question it. Until one day, it becomes too clear to ignore. And that day is closer than it seems. But here's what makes this moment different. You're not meant to force anything. You're not meant to chase clarity. You're meant to notice. To feel. To recognize what is already unfolding, without needing immediate answers. Because answers come when the time is right. And right now, something deeper than answers is forming. Something that cannot be rushed. Something that cannot be replaced. Something that cannot be ignored forever. Take a breath. And ask yourself honestly. Why does this feel so specific? Why does this feel like it's speaking directly to something you couldn't explain before? Because it is. Not by coincidence, but by alignment. There are moments when everything becomes just clear enough for you to realize that something bigger has been moving all along. And this is one of those moments. But this is only the beginning. Because what your person almost said is not gone. It's evolving. And what they're beginning to feel now is only the surface of something much deeper that hasn't fully revealed itself yet. And when it does, it won't feel sudden. It will feel like something you've known all along. Finally finding its voice. There's a moment coming, not loud, not dramatic, but so precise that you'll feel it before you understand it. It won't announce itself with words. It won't arrive with explanations. It will arrive as a shift, a quiet change in the air between you and them, something subtle, yet impossible to ignore once it touches you. And the strange part is, it has already begun. Stay with this. Because what's unfolding now is not visible on the surface, but it's real in ways that go deeper than anything that has been shown so far. Your person has started to notice something they didn't expect. Not about you, but about themselves. A realization that doesn't come all at once, but in fragments. Small pieces that slowly begin to connect. Moments where they pause and wonder why certain thoughts keep returning, why certain feelings don't fade. Why your presence seems to exist even in your absence. And this is where everything quietly begins to change. Because once someone becomes aware, they can never go back to not knowing. Don't skip, because this is the part most people misunderstand. They might still appear the same. They might still act in ways that don't fully reveal what's happening inside. But internally, something has shifted. Something that cannot be undone. It's like standing at the edge of a realization. Not fully stepping into it yet, but no longer able to deny that it's there. And that edge is where they are now. Let me ask you something. Have you ever felt something so real that even your silence couldn't hide it from yourself? That's exactly what they're experiencing. They tried to move past it. They tried to make sense of it in simpler ways. They tried to convince themselves that it wasn't as deep as it felt. But truth has a way of returning. Especially when it's connected to something genuine. And what they feel is beginning to feel undeniable. Something important is waiting for you, but it's not just about what they will say. It's about what they are becoming. Because words only matter when they come from clarity. And right now, they are moving toward that clarity, step by step, without even realizing how close they're getting. There's something else you need to understand. Not all delays mean absence. Sometimes, a delay means preparation. Preparation for something that needs to be felt fully, before it can be expressed honestly. And your person. They are preparing. Not consciously planning, not forcing anything, but naturally arriving at a point where they won't be able to ignore what they feel anymore. And when that moment comes, it won't be confusing. It won't be uncertain. It will be clear, in a way that surprises even them. Stay till the end. Because this next part changes the way you see everything. There's a pattern you might not have noticed yet. Think back, not to what was said, but to what was felt. There were moments, small, almost unnoticeable, where something felt different between you. A pause that lasted just a little longer than usual. A look that carried more meaning than words. A silence that didn't feel empty, but full. Those moments were not random. They were glimpses. Glimpses of something that hadn't fully formed yet, but was already real. And now, those glimpses are starting to connect. Your person is beginning to understand those moments in a new way. Not as coincidences, but as signs. Not as passing feelings, but as something that stayed. And this is where the hidden message begins to take shape. Because what they almost said before was only a fragment of what they are now starting to feel. Back then, it was unclear. Now, it's becoming undeniable. But here's the part that requires patience. Understanding doesn't always lead to immediate action. Sometimes, it leads to deeper reflection. And that reflection is where everything transforms. Right now, they are reflecting. Revisiting moments. Replaying feelings. Questioning things they once ignored. And in that process, something inside them is aligning. Slowly, quietly, but powerfully. Don't skip, because this is where the energy shifts. There will be a moment. And it might come when you least expect it, where everything feels slightly different. Not dramatically. Not obviously. But enough for you to notice. Enough for you to pause and wonder, what just changed? And that moment will not come out of nowhere. It will be the result of everything that has been building, beneath the surface, all this time. Because nothing real appears suddenly. It reveals itself when the time is right. And that time is getting closer. But listen carefully. This is not about waiting for them. This is about recognizing what is already happening, without needing proof in the way you might expect. Because proof doesn't always come through words. Sometimes, it comes through feeling. Through presence. Through an unexplainable sense that something is aligning, even if you can't fully see it yet. And if you're honest with yourself, you've already felt it. In small ways. In quiet moments. In those brief seconds where everything slows down. And something deeper becomes noticeable. That's not imagination. That's awareness. And awareness is the beginning of everything. Something important is waiting for you, but it requires you to trust what you feel, even when it doesn't have a clear explanation yet. Because clarity is closer than it seems. Your person is moving through something they can no longer ignore. A realization that keeps returning, stronger each time. A feeling that refuses to fade. No matter how much they try to understand it logically. And eventually, logic steps aside. And truth takes its place. That's the moment when everything changes. But that moment is still forming. Still building. Still approaching in a way that cannot be rushed. And this is where part 3 begins to reveal something even deeper. Because what they are about to realize next is not just about what they feel. It's about what they can no longer hold back. Something shifts when holding back becomes heavier than speaking, and that shift is closer than anyone realizes. It doesn't happen all at once. It builds quietly, like pressure beneath still water, until one moment feels different from all the rest. A moment where silence no longer feels safe, and expression no longer feels optional. And your person is moving toward that exact moment. Not rushed. Not forced. But inevitable. Don't skip. Because this is where the truth begins to surface in ways that can't be undone. There's been a silent conversation happening within them, one that never reached you, yet somehow still carries your presence. A conversation filled with questions they didn't have answers to before, but now, those questions are changing. Not, what is this? But, why does this feel so real? Not, should I say something? But, what happens if I don't? Feel the difference. Because that difference is everything. When someone starts asking themselves the right questions, answers begin to rise naturally. Not from overthinking, but from something deeper, something honest. And honesty has a way of breaking through hesitation. Stay till the end, because something important is waiting for you. There's a moment they keep replaying, over and over, even if they don't talk about it. A specific memory where something almost came into the open. Where the distance between what they felt and what they could have said became so small that it scared them. Not because it was wrong, but because it was real. And real things change everything. That moment didn't disappear. It stayed. Quietly, but persistently. And now, it's returning, not as confusion, but as clarity. Let me ask you something. Have you ever tried to forget a moment, only to realize it keeps finding its way back, stronger each time? That's where they are now. That moment, that almost confession, has turned into something deeper. It's no longer just a memory. It's become a realization that refuses to stay hidden. And this is where everything begins to transform. Because when a feeling becomes clear, it demands acknowledgement. And acknowledgement leads to action. But here's the part most people don't see. Action doesn't always come immediately. Sometimes, it comes after a quiet decision is made internally. A decision that no one else hears. A decision that shifts everything. Even before a single word is spoken. And your person. They are getting closer to that decision. Something important is waiting for you, and it's connected to that exact moment. Because once someone decides, truly decides, that what they feel matters, everything else begins to align around that truth. Barriers start to feel smaller. Doubts lose their weight. And silence starts to feel temporary. Don't skip, because this is the turning point. They are beginning to see something they didn't allow themselves to see before. Not just the feeling, but the meaning behind it. The reason it stayed. The reason it kept returning. The reason it never fully left, no matter how much time passed or how much distance existed. And when meaning becomes clear, it changes how everything is viewed. Suddenly, moments that once seemed ordinary, feel significant. Conversations that once felt casual, carry deeper layers. Even silence starts to feel like it was saying something all along. This is where awareness becomes undeniable. And once it reaches that point, there is no going back. Stay with this, because what comes next is quieter, but even more powerful. There's a subtle courage beginning to form within them. Not loud confidence. Not sudden boldness. But a steady, growing willingness to face what they feel. And that kind of courage doesn't disappear. It grows stronger the more it's acknowledged. Right now, it's still building. Still finding its shape. Still becoming something they can trust. But once it reaches a certain point, it moves. Naturally. Without force. Without hesitation. And that movement is what you're beginning to sense, even now. Because this isn't just happening within them. It's something you can feel too, even if you can't explain why. That quiet pull. That unspoken connection. That sense that something is shifting, even without visible change. That's not coincidence. That's alignment. And alignment always leads somewhere. But here's what makes this moment different. You're not being asked to wait in uncertainty. You're being shown that something is already in motion. That something real is unfolding, even if it hasn't fully revealed itself yet. Because the truth is, what they are about to realize next will make it impossible to stay silent any longer. Not because they are forced to speak, but because what they feel will no longer fit inside silence. Take a breath. And notice how everything feels right now. Not rushed. Not chaotic. but quietly building towards something meaningful. That's because you are standing at the edge of a shift. A shift that doesn't announce itself loudly, but changes everything once it arrives. And that shift is closer than it has ever been before. Because in the next part, something within them reaches a point where holding back is no longer an option. And what follows will feel like something you've been sensing all along, finally stepping into the light.